There you go. 4-punch, 5-punch, 6-punch combination. Body shot, bang, 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 bang.
Telling him not to counterpunch.
Boom! Will Rackman get up?
Iron. You're going through all the instructions. This is for the championship of the world. I expect a tough, clean fight. Protect yourself at all times.
Welcome back, fight fans. This is your host, Alden Kodash of the Fight City Podcast, here to bring you an in-depth discussion of the last night's shocker, Teofimo Lopez beating Vasiliy Lomachenko in the bubble. We're going to bring you two separate expert opinions. First, Zachary Alapi of the Fight City, and then Derek Santos, trainer of Sullivan Barrera and many others, in just a moment. But starting off, how are you today, Zach?
Hey, Alden, I'm doing well. It's nice to be back.
Absolutely. So we're going to be discussing what is indubitably going to be the fight of the upset of the year in 2020, a year of very surprising feats. This probably tops everything else. Teofimo Lopez, the 4-1 underdog, 15-0, relatively unproven, comes out and beats arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. A fight that's going to send, if not already, has sent major shockwaves throughout the sport. It's getting publicity and attention outside the sport. What is your initial reaction to this?
I mean, it was a hell of a performance from Lopez, top to bottom. I mean, I couldn't really be more impressed with the young guy. I mean, the other thing, though, I kind of wonder is, should it be viewed as that big of an upset in a way? And I only say that not because I had any particularly brilliant insight into the fight. I didn't put out a prediction beforehand. I didn't say Lopez was going to win. However, Ryan Scalia, I don't know if you know him from boxing Twitter, but he co-hosts the Great Fight North boxing podcast up here in Canada. And for well over a year, he's been saying when Lopez and Lomachenko meet, Lopez is going to win, book it. And so I've kind of had this in my ear for a while. And I'm not saying that I 100% bought in, but, his confidence and just kind of the arguments he made for it of the power, the speed, the age difference working in his favor, the, having the right style and temperament to do it, just kind of lingered there a little bit. And so while it's definitely a significant upset, without a doubt, you look at the odds and everything and Lomachenko's resume. And like you said, Lopez, kind of forgetting how thin his resume was to take on a guy like Loma. It certainly is an upset. But at the same time, it's I wonder if we pull back a little and just kind of look at how it played out and just kind of Loma's injuries the last couple of years, the year of inactivity, were more people worried about looking stupid if they didn't pick Lomachenko to win the fight than giving Lopez more or making it a bit more of an even matchup at this point in their careers. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing to kind of reflect on after the fact now, especially how the fight played out.
Yeah, I mean, Lopez, he had a right to talk a little crap after the fight, but one thing he stated that really made sense and stuck with me after is that coming off the 14-month layoff for Loma, he knew it would take him a little long to get started, and that's really what it looked like was going on to some extent, besides the fact that Loma was hesitant about getting into the power punching range of Teofimo. He took a very long time to get his rhythm. I've compared it to Bernard Hopkins against Jermaine Taylor in their first fight as the fight that really sticks out to me as being comparable, because Loma, on all three judges' scorecards, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but he lost the first 7 rounds in all 3 cards, which isn't necessarily controversial. I had him winning the second round, but besides that, he was dropping a lot of rounds and just not doing anything in there. His punch stats were astonishingly low. He was not throwing punches. But you also have to give Teofimo credit for controlling the distance well. And
just to that point, I mean, I think that's a really key point, because you're seeing a lot of takes out there of if Loma had just started earlier, and so on and so forth. And while there's obviously truth to that, I mean, I think that, like you're just saying, we need to look at what did Lopez do in those first 7 rounds to negate his offense. I mean, I think that it was pretty obvious that while he abandoned it a bit later on, especially when Loma came on in the second half of the fight, he had a nice active jab early. That right hand to the body that he was shooting was super effective early, kind of keeping Lomachenko off balance. And so, that combined with just the threat of his right hand, which was very real and which you could tell Lomachenko was wary of, those things, as much as Loma taking too long to download the information, as they like to say about him, played into Lopez, clearly dominating the first half. Well, clearly winning the first half of the fight, let's say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what he did well was he was punching with Lomachenko when Lomachenko decided to finally get off and try to close the distance. He was not yielding to the hand speed and craftiness of Lomachenko. Like he said before the fight, he was going to show him no respect. I underestimated his chances. I thought he was just talking up his chances. I couldn't be more wrong, and I'll admit it. I one of my many major gaffes of 2020, which has been a shocking year. I predicted Wilder. I predicted Sergey Derevianchenko. I predicted Lomachenko, and here I am.
Honestly, Alden, it's been a shocking 2020 across the board, to say the least. So I think that we can cut ourselves some slack if we had a few predictions that didn't go our way in the boxing world. But it's the same. I didn't put out a prediction for this fight. I didn't talk about it on social or anything in the build-up. But
You're lucky.
I yeah, I guess so, right? So I can be careful with what I say now. But I think that pretty much everyone, I assumed Lomachenko would at least, whether I thought seriously about Lopez pulling off an upset, I assumed Lomachenko would do a lot more of his thing, throughout the fight. I don't think that anyone, even the people who really thought Lopez was either going to win or had a better chance than the odds indicated, would have assumed that the first 7 rounds would play out the way that they did, right? I mean, the whole talking point was maybe Lopez could catch him early, and surprise him with that speed and that power and the size advantage and stuff. But I mean, to see him just kind of very patiently and confidently step to him and, let's be honest, outbox him the first half of the fight was a really interesting development.
Yeah, the ring generalship was what did it. I mean, he controlled distance. He didn't get ahead of himself. He was very patient. And I agree with you. He outboxed him. But in the late rounds, there was a string of rounds where we were starting to see the Lomachenko that we were prepared to see. 8, 9, 10, 11, all big textbook Lomachenko rounds. Yeah. What do you think happened there that allowed him to shift the fight in his favor?
I mean, what you're just talking about, ring generalship, right? And just sort of the whole geography of the fight kind of changed almost in a blink of an eye, where he, instead of circling and retreating, even when he took a step back, it was more like a half step back or a 1 step back, and then he'd hold his ground and start fighting. And from there, he was kind of able to do more of those subtle things that we've come to really admire in him, some of those side steps to create angles. I mean, we didn't see as much of that as we usually do, because I think Lopez showed, man, that kid has great feet. He was moving with him very, very well. Yeah. But we started to see more of that from Lomachenko, and he just came out more aggressive. It's like a switch went off, and he realized, whether he was told or just realized it himself, or a combination of both, that he had to bring the fight to Lopez. And for a while, it actually looked like, I forget if it was in 10 or 11. It was that one particularly big. I mean, those were all clear Lomachenko rounds, in my opinion. But there was one round where it looked like he was really pouring it on and had him hurt. Lopez was starting to drop his arms. Mouth was open. He looked tired. And it came down to just aggression and just biting down and fighting and holding his ground. And so when you saw that and those 4 rounds unfold, you kind of wondered, that's what, before the 12th, right? And we'll talk about the 12th, I'm sure. But when you saw those 4 rounds unfold, you're like, man, I wonder, if you just started this exact thing 2 rounds earlier, what kind of fight are we seeing right now?
Yeah, I agree. I think the only weakness that Teofimo Lopez showed last night was his defense. I thought that his head movement just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Whether or not that was a combination of fatigue is debatable, but we've seen this before in the Nakatani fight, and I hate to bring that up because that was a lot of, at least mine and other detractors' main sticking point of why Lopez was unprepared for this fight. But that is a valid weakness, I thought, is just his lack of head movement. But what he made up for in the 12th round was his grit and determination. I think it was shocking to see Lopez look like he was fading to the extent he was in 4 rounds in a row. Lomachenko, who obviously is stronger when the fight goes on in general, just being put on his heels in the 12th round that Lopez really dominated, I thought.
Oh my God. I mean, what happened in the 12th round was Lopez drew a line in the sand and just beat the crap out of Lomachenko. Like, let's be honest, I mean, just body language. He was visibly hurt multiple times. Even just look at the punch stats from from that last round. Lopez landed 50 of 98 punches compared to 19 of 59 for Lomachenko. And to be honest, like after the way 8 through 11 went, I assumed that we were just going to get another repeat of those 4 rounds with Loma just kind of doing his thing and bringing it in strong over the finish line, maybe even push to try to knock him down or something, just based on how those previous 4 rounds had gone. And I was just kind of expecting a rinse and repeat of what we'd been seeing in the second half of the fight, like a classic tale of two halves of the fight,
Yeah.
But we didn't get that at all. And that round by itself is really what stamped this as like kind of a star-making performance for Lopez, because that's the round where he showed he has something special. Because he looked gassed before that. He found that second wind. And my God, it was so impressive.
Yeah. That's right. I didn't know where it came from. Because his father in the corner was telling him, Lomachenko, he's going to need a knockout. He's going to come out, fight this last round cautiously. It turned out on the scorecards that Lopez didn't actually need to fight that 12th round the way he did, but as a champion, he did. And he really, at least on my scorecard, that really made the difference. And
it was interesting too to see a guy that young who has such a, let's be honest, complex relationship with his father, not listen to him in such an effective way. Like it takes a lot of maturity. Like you don't expect that from a 23-year-old, right? To get that advice from like a very domineering presence in his life, let's be honest. But someone he also loves and respects at the same time. And to go out and to understand after 11 hard rounds that no, what I was told is wrong and I need to beat this guy back right now. And that's what he did. And it was actually a pleasure to watch. It was those last 2 rounds, the action was phenomenal. It took what was like a very compelling, chess match. And I'd say like the last 3 rounds really turned it into a hell of a fight. In that sense. So that was impressive. It shows like there's an understanding of, what can convert maybe the more casual fan into a Teofimo Lopez fan all of a sudden. And God, you love to see it.
Yeah, and now let's, unfortunately, and I wanted to save this for last, switch gears to the judges' scorecards, because I know it's kind of a black eye on this event. But let me just ask you up front, do you think this soured the event, seeing some of those wide, unrealistic scorecards?
You know what? I mean, look, there's no shortage of scorecard, like just horrendous scorecards to talk about in boxing, and I'm sure we're going to have more in the next month or two, probably. For me, no, just because I know what I saw in the ring. I know that the right guy won the fight, and the fact that the fight took place in the first place is enough for me to still focus more on the positives. But I do think we need to actually talk about the scorecards in like a substantial way here, because like, I don't know what your read is on it, because you could take like a very cynical view of a couple of those cards, or you could isolate it as like the classic incompetence we're used to seeing. But I would hate to think that it boiled down to, with a couple of people, that Lomachenko, unless he just like clearly dominated every round, wasn't going to win on someone's card. Like, I don't like to think that, but I also have to acknowledge that, let's be honest, for the networks, for promoters, for the long-term future of the sport, a Lopez win is a very nice thing,
Yeah.
But he deserved it. So it's not like it in no way was it given to him, because he totally deserved it. But we can't ignore the kind of like financial and marketing and, outside the ring implications of a Lopez win here.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the Letterman card hopefully should have. Yeah, it hopefully should have professional repercussions. All due respect to the late Harold Letterman, but Julie Letterman is not her first suspect card. This is probably her most suspect card. I mean, this is right up there with Adelaide Bird and Canelo Alvarez versus Triple G 1.
She had it 11-1, right?
She had it 11-1. So yeah, the only round she had for Lomachenko was round 11. Honestly, I thought he won the 10th more decisively than the 11th, but
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so very suspect scoring. The only card I didn't have an issue with was Tim Cheatham's 116-112, which I still thought was on kind of the tail end of what really happened. I thought it was more of a 115-113 type fight. I wouldn't argue with a 114-114 card either. But
I thought it was closer to a draw than those two other than the 117 and the 119 cards, for sure.
Yeah, I think at that point you're starting to really push it. But Steve Weisfeld is a very respectable judge, so that was very surprising to see him turn in a 9 rounds to 3 scorecard. But then again, if you had it 8 rounds to 4, then you're only talking about 1 round different from that. So
true. Yeah.
Maybe I'm just not seeing what some of the other people saw. I saw it a little closer, but nonetheless, the right man won, like you said. I can't complain there.
I guess in terms of just like, if we're talking about the cards for a second, like when you think of the first 7 rounds, like I thought that, I edged the second to Loma.
Yeah, that's what I did as well.
Yeah, and so that, with 8 through 11, that makes it a 115, 113. I mean, I find if there was another one that you could give him was like, the 7th maybe seemed to, or was it the 6th? Like one of those seemed like
I think it was the 7th is what Andre Ward gave to Lomachenko, which had it a draw on his card, but. The inactivity it spoke very loudly, and the numbers just reflect it. The guy either couldn't or wouldn't get off. I lean towards couldn't.
What do you think that says about his like immediate future in terms of like what might happen next for Lomachenko and stuff? And I mean, like, he was in with a very like, prodigious talent, like a young, strong, fast opponent, but like, what do you see for him off the heels of this? Like, obviously it was so late when the fight ended. I didn't really watch any of the post-fight stuff. Did we get any words from him? I know he left the ring immediately.
Yeah, but we got a few words. I mean, he was obviously disappointed, wasn't able to make a definitive statement of whether or not he thought he won or lost the fight. He wanted to see the replay, which is understandable. It's difficult to score fights while you're participating in them. What's clear from Teofimo Lopez's post-fight press conference is that, he wasn't overly impressed by Lomachenko. That might be crap talking.
Yeah.
He considered him basic, and the fact that there isn't a rematch clause in this contract, I don't think we're going to be seeing a rematch. I mean, there's nothing driving it, and it seems like Teofimo Lopez is focused on what he considers bigger and better things, namely a fight with Devin Haney, who is the WBC champion. I don't even know. I think for all intents and purposes, the boxing world, including Lopez, considers Lopez the undisputed champion. So it's not like he's fighting for that 4th strap. He's just fighting kind of the last man standing at 135. But he also has other options. I mean, next month we'll be seeing Luke Campbell go up against Ryan Garcia. If Garcia is able to prove his merit in that fight, which I think is really a career-defining fight for him at this stage in his career, that would be another great fight for Lopez. Obviously, Tank Davis, he's fought at 135 before. I don't know how he's fighting at 130 against Leo Santa Cruz.
To be determined.
To be determined. But when he's done with his action there, I think that could possibly be one of the biggest fights, considering that Tank Davis would have pay-per-view experience to boot. So there are still opportunities for Lopez at 135, and it seemed like he was able to make the weight without any reported huge difficulties. I mean, it clearly looked like he rehydrated to something far north, I would say, in the welterweight frame he looked like. And I'm sure he's able to move up if he wants, but if I were him, if I were his management, if I were Bob Arum, I would wait for the smoke to clear at 140, wait for a unified champion to emerge between Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez, which it seems like they're on track to do by beginning of 2021, and then go for my second undisputed championship, which, he would be definitely a live dog, if not even a favorite to win.
Totally. I mean, I saw something about his father saying, 135 is a massive struggle to make. I mean, or 135. And, I take anything Teofimo Sr. says with a grain of salt or don't listen to it. But at the same time, I think that if he can still make 35, I would love to see him there for a couple more fights. I mean, the thing about this win and how it's good for the sport is, to me, it's not good for the sport in and of itself, but it is good for the sport if Lopez and Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis all start to fight each other within the next year. Then it will have been great for the sport, because these guys are young enough where if they start fighting soon, you could get 3 fights, in whatever between these guys and like whatever order or combination, potentially multiple fights with each of them in the different matchups. And they can even move up in weight together. Some of them, like, this is a very, very exciting prospect. I think that it's great for Lopez that he won the Lomachenko fight. And it's really interesting now to have him kind of at the top of that division, and a guy like entering the pound for pound rankings and stuff like that. But it has to follow with the right kind of risky matchmaking that he's shown he's totally willing to do. And we need the guys like Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia, who, to their credit, have also shown a willingness. And Garcia has been begging for a big fight. Now he's got it with Luke Campbell, so that's nice to see. But they got, if Garcia wins, Haney, I expect, should handle Gamboa fairly easily. They got to start fighting each other now. There's no point in marinating these fights. I think that, having this fight on ESPN has shown that the landscape with COVID and everything has to change. We need big fights. We need aggressive matchmaking. We need guys to fight each other early.
Yeah, I think Lopez, to his credit, got the ball rolling early with fighting at that elite level, not resting behind a name and a social media presence. He took on the best pound for pound fighter in the sport. Now he dethroned him, and now hopefully that sets off a domino effect in which the best young lions start fighting each other on a regular basis. That might happen. That might be a consequence of this fight. I think it's certainly more likely now than if Lomachenko would win and win decisively last night that we start seeing the Devin Haney's, the Ryan Garcias, the Tank Davis start to challenge the best. He dethroned Lomachenko, and now he's roughly the same age and in similar themes. So
and he's got the platform now to shame these other guys if they don't step up to the plate.
I thought he was shaming them just by taking this fight. That's what I gave Lopez the most credit for, is taking this fight. I thought he was overwhelmed and outmatched, but he proved he wasn't, and now it's time for the other young lions to step up. There's no excuse anymore.
And I think it's fun too that these guys came up in the amateur ranks together. They know each other. They fought each other. They've sparred together. Whatever. And so I do feel like that there's a respect, but there's competitiveness between them that you've seen for even a couple of years now, despite the fact of how young they are. And it's kind of unusual to see guys that young kind of come up on almost the same trajectory, but and also start to cross over a little bit and have their name out there and to be so gifted in the first place. So I think that it's way too early to talk about what it could become, the Lopez, Haney, Garcia and era and whatnot, a Davis era, but we could not be at a better starting point for it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, I think they're set to further define the landscape of boxing. We have Teofimo Lopez certainly in the top 10 pound for pound. I guess I'll end it with that. Where does this put both fighters respectively on the pound for pound list?
Oh boy, I mean, I don't personally have a list. I think they're interesting, but the debates you can sort of get lost in the weeds a bit with the debates about these things. But I mean, Lopez definitely in the top 10. Lomachenko, I would still keep him in the top 10, obviously. I would want to see what he does after this. Like, is he going to stay at lightweight? Is he going to move down? I don't know if that's a possibility.
It seemed like he was looking for an excuse to move back down to 130, if not just ready to do it, regardless of the result of last night. I mean, 135, he's been up against it in terms of guys that just have the stature and the frame to give him difficulties off the bat. It certainly looked like size played some extent last night, not the full extent, but some extent into his inability to get off and maintain a sustained tactic against Lopez. But back at 130, there's some interesting fights, but in terms of lucrative big money fights, I'm just hoping that we don't see a talent like Lomachenko drift into obscurity because he's no longer fighting at 135.
That's a good point. I mean, it's a complicated thing for him because to his immense credit, he's moved up. He moved up at a rapid clip to chase the biggest possible challenges and the best possible fights. And I think we need to, people definitely need to take a moment to just kind of acknowledge how impressive what he did. Yeah, I think that when you're talking about these big lightweights like Haney and Lopez and guys, especially like Lopez and Garcia, who can hit really hard, it's just going to be so tough for him. But yeah, I agree with you. I hope he doesn't just slip into obscurity, like win a few belts and defend them against guys that he, makes quit because they just are literally not in his league and he outclasses so badly. It's interesting to see him because he's so good take on challenges that no kind of normal boxer should be able to take on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and back at 130, he still has, I guess, the next budding super fight, if you could call it that, that could be on the horizon would be him and Shakur Stevenson. But, we'll have to see how much he has left. I mean, right now, honestly, I'd probably favor Shakur Stevenson against him, which if you asked me that a week ago, I'd call myself crazy. But
that's a good point.
It remains to be seen how much of this is attributed to age and tread on his tires. I mean, it's been mentioned that he's had well over 400 fights, including the amateurs. And, I didn't think at age 32 with the kind of condition he keeps himself in that he was going to start getting old overnight, but that might have had some involvement into what we saw last night. One of the telltale signs, as we saw in the Hopkins-Taylor fight, was it's just you see the openings there, but it's difficult pulling the trigger. And it seemed like that was bedeviling him at least throughout the first 7 rounds of last night. But all due credit to Lopez, he fought a phenomenal fight. He moves up into the pound-for-pound rankings. He's the undisputed lightweight champion. If he chooses to defend, he has plenty of opportunities to do so. If he chooses to move up, he also has plenty of opportunities to fight fellow top-ranked fighters in a high-stakes fight. We're talking Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez, but hopefully the winner of that for the undisputed 140-pound championship. So yeah, that's all I had. I thank you for being with me today, Zach, and I hope you had just as much shock and enjoyment out of last night as I did.
I did. It was one of those nights where, you get the exact fight you want to see. You don't have to pay pay-per-view for it. I mean, as a boxing fan, you don't get many nights like that, so you got to relish them. And, whatever Lopez does next, Lomachenko too, of course, but whatever Lopez does next, we're going to be watching.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Zach.
All right. Thanks, Alden. It was fun.
I expect a tough, clean fight. Protect yourself at all times. Any questions from the challengers?
Welcome back. We're being joined now by Derek Santos, trainer of Sullivan Breer and many other top fighters. How are you doing today, Derek?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we had a bit of a major shock, probably the leading candidate, if not the shooting for upset of the year, Teofimo Lopez defeating Vasiliy Lomachenko to win all 4 belts and the Ring Magazine Lightweight Championship of the World. What were some of your initial takeaways from last night's stunning performance?
Well, first of all, to your point about upset of the year and whatnot, I think the reason why people are saying that or thinking that is because they're so used to, you got a guy who's, what was Lomachenko's record career-wise was what, I think like 412-2 or something like that.
Including
between amateurs, including the amateurs. So people are thinking that. But I really thought that Teo had a legitimate chance. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and say that, I picked him or that I expected that to happen. I will say, though, that I thought he had a legitimate chance. And for me, I saw it, a little more like, 60-40, 60-35. And a couple things came up. If you have to look at everything that was prior to this fight. How many times did Lomachenko say when he was fighting at 35 that these guys were big for him?
Yeah, he said it plenty.
Even though he handled Luke Campbell and whatnot, that was a very tough fight. And even after Luke Campbell, he was like, I need to go back down to my more natural weight. Okay, so you get the situation, and that's not to take anything away from Teo. What I'm saying is he was saying that. So you get people who go, he's saying that, but, he spread a stare throwing darts and his movement and blah, blah, blah. But then you take the fact that, shoulder problem, knee problems, size problems. Because I've met Lomachenko in person, and I know Teo, obviously, and I knew Teo was physically much bigger than him. And I kept telling everybody, Teo has a very good chance because of the timing and his power. And one of the things that I wondered, and I had said this in the gym the other day, I said, we're going to find out right away how this goes. And I said, if Teo comes out and he starts backing up and lets Lomachenko get in a rhythm, the fight's over. But what happened? He turned that right around. Right from the beginning, he went right to him. Yeah, and exactly. threw more jabs than he'd probably thrown in God knows how long.
It's true. He set Lomachenko on the back foot from the very start, and he was saying in the pre-fight that this guy doesn't know how to fight going backwards. Do you believe that now that you saw what he was able to accomplish throughout most of the first half of the fight?
I don't want to say that so much but I will say this: he never let Lomachenko really get in a rhythm or think too much. Because he had to be going backwards. So kudos on them. If that was their plan, that was great. I had always said with Lomachenko, you either had to go forward or you had to throw with him. You couldn't let him throw first and then try to come back with counters. Time and time again, we've seen this in many of his other fights, and the guys were just like, by the time they threw, he was to the left of them, to the right of them, around them. And I kept saying you had to go with him, Yeah. And so, to Teo's credit, he was like, you know what, I'd rather, start working first and see what I got. I will say this. I believe the power made a difference. I do. If you look, there was times from those body shots that Lomachenko took early maybe to see, what has he got? You notice that he never, after he took those shots, the first couple rounds, he never tried to impose himself. When a fighter thinks that, okay, this is what you got and I don't have to be worried about this, and if I'm not mistaken, he got hit with a hook early in the first, I think it was either second or third round. That looked for a second like he got stumbled off balance. But I feel that showed him some power, and I feel that with that, he sort of kind of got stuck. I couldn't understand it. I'm watching round 3. At the end of round 6, it was 5-1 Teo in my scoring.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of us had it. All 3 judges had the first 7 rounds.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. But that said, I say that with a grain of salt. They had the right winner.
Oh yeah.
Theo clearly won the fight, but the scoring was something altogether wrong.
Yeah, I wouldn't complain.
In my opinion.
Yeah, with Tim Cheatham at 116, 112, I think that's about as far as you can push it. But when you get to 117, 111, let alone 119, 109, I think, that's where you can start being disrespectful to Lomachenko.
Yeah.
But
I thought that was eye-popping. I thought that was, like when that score came out, I was like, as soon as the first score came out, I said, oh, they gave Theo.
Oh, yeah.
Decision.
It was harder to conceive of Lomachenko winning that many rounds than Theo because Lomachenko was just, you can see in his punch stats.
I kept saying
the first half of the fight.
Yeah. I kept saying he didn't do enough. He was looking like he might have been on the way, between round 7, 8, and 9. And I said to myself, man, he really has to win out all the rest of the rounds to conceivably be given a draw or even to drop. He might have to drop Theo. And there was a time or two where it seemed like Theo was frozen and took some shots, but he never really looked hurt. No. Except for the one time where they were in a clinch and he kind of took like what seemed to be like 3 left hands in a row or something like that as they were, and he just wasn't really moving off him. He was waiting for the referee. I thought, like, what to deal with that? But he never, so, again, size and power. Lomachenko, is known for his accuracy in body shots, but anybody can get knocked down from a rightly placed body shot. But I think what that showed is that, Theo just physically, the power didn't bother him. Lomachenko's power didn't bother him.
So some people are going to look at this fight and look at how Lomachenko controlled some of the latter rounds and just wonder, what if he started earlier? What did Teofimo do to ensure that he wasn't able to get started earlier? it must have been more than just the size, right?
Well, I don't think, I thought that maybe Lomachenko thought, okay, this kid's he's talking all this nonsense, but he's going to come out and he's going to try to play counter. And Theo just did not. He was very alert, very sharp, with his movement. Obviously he didn't have to do the angles that Lomachenko did or anything. He just was, using his jab, stepping over a lot, taking what Lomachenko gave him. Because there was times that Lomachenko, sit back on that rope and put his high guard up. Okay, so what did he do? He threw 2 hooks to the body, which is what you're supposed to do, He was very smart in that sense, where he just took what he could get, what was open and didn't try to press the situation. I think that after the second round, he's like, okay, this is how it's going to be. I can fight at this pace all day long, Yeah. And I remember saying that. I had a friend of mine who called me from California and said, what do you think? I said, I think Lomachenko's in trouble. And he said to me, this is after the 3rd round, and he said to me, why? And I said, because Teo's very comfortable in what he's doing right now. And he can fight. He's a young kid. He's a young buck. I said, he can do this all day. He's going to fight at that pace all day, and he's going to end up winning. And I said it at the time, he's going to end up winning the decision if Lomachenko doesn't end it. Now, in Lomachenko's corner, I know they didn't translate often, but I did hear that, patience. But I'm not sure, again, I know I've heard great things about Lomachenko's father as a trainer, and I'm not, no trainer is perfect. Every trainer has flaws. Our strategies always have flaws. Plus, at the end of the day, it's the 2 guys fighting. It doesn't matter what you tell them in the corner. It's the 2 guys applying what you're trying to, do. You're just trying to help strategically. You're a fighter. But I kind of felt like, okay, stay cautious. That was like the narrative round 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's like you have to know that you're giving up all those rounds.
Yeah, and Lomachenko's never had to
the trainer.
like he was behind on the cards like that before. I mean, he's never had to pull out a victory like that, maybe since the Salido fight, and that was really such a long time ago that many people consider it irrelevant. But, you know, he has to dig himself out of a hole the second half of the fight, which he's not used to doing.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, in any fight, I would not be comfortable going into, I'd be trying to light a fire under my guy going into round 6 or 7, and we're down 4-1, 5-1. You know, I'm not comfortable with that. I hate playing catch up. You know, I'm the kind of person that I think like, hey, get some rounds in the bank, and then we'll you know, judge how it's going in the middle of the fight, but get the early rounds in the bank. Don't play that game, or keep it even, or get ahead, but don't ever be comfortable with being behind and playing the sprint game. Oh, we're gonna sprint at the end, we're gonna catch you. You know, and I kind of felt like strategically they had said that before the fight. Oh, we're gonna drag him into deeper waters and da-da-da. Okay, but you have to work to do that.
Yep.
You in order to drown somebody, you have to carry them out to the deep water and hold them down. And he wasn't holding him down. So, you know, there wasn't the pressure to say, okay, I'm going to drown him. He's going to get tired. You know, I heard the commentators say, well, you know, I think they're waiting for him to get tired. Well, how are you going to tire a fighter out when you're not working at a certain rate that's going to make him, you know, come out of his comfort zone? He's not getting hit or beat up like that. So then what are we expecting? What are we waiting for?
Yeah.
You know, I don't see what they thought was going to happen. And again, you know, with such intellect that I know that his father has, Lomachenko's dad, I just feel like it was a little weird. Like, I don't know if they just were kind of sitting in the corner. And you could tell after the 12th round, the look on Lomachenko's face knew that he lost the fight.
Yep, the body.
He just kind of shrugged it. Yeah, he just kind of shrugged his shoulders. And I remember he looked at the other corner guy and just shrugged his shoulders, and the eyebrows went up like, oh, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, that didn't come out as we expected, you know, and you know, you got to give credit to T.O. for digging, too, because at the end, honestly, he could have tried to just stay sticking a jab, moving around, and he did the right thing.
I was going to bring that up. His dad told him going into the last round, fight cautiously. This guy needs a knockout to win. Instead, he comes out and fights the round of his life. I mean, did that shock you, the way he fought that round and how effective he was able to be in the 12th round?
Well, I tell you what, and I understand why. He was probably thinking, okay, this guy hadn't had that power. And when he landed, even though that's the only round that I thought that T.O., like for a minute, between the 11th and 12th round, like he looked like he might be a little weary.
Yeah.
But in the exchanges and in the interchange, he caught Lomachenko.
Yep. And
when he hit him, and Lomachenko backed up, and that little move, that little bump move, whether it was Junior or T.O. that came up with it, with the take him off you every time, you know what? Money. But guess what? Yeah, but guess what? You also have to wonder, how many times did Lomachenko get inside on him and didn't throw any punches?
Yeah.
Because he kept being successful with that because Lomachenko would come in and throw nothing and just lean on him, and then he would just push him off. And so kudos to them for saying, hey, just push him off. But at the same time, on the other side, you got to say, Lomachenko, what were you thinking? You're there. When you're there, you got to fire. You know, time and time again, Lomachenko got inside in those mid to later rounds and just let T.O. push him off. He didn't throw anything. You know, and anybody wants to go back and see that, you can see it. He got there with the ability. T.O. didn't immediately push him off. He got there with the ability to throw. He just didn't do it.
Were you surprised at Lomachenko's ability to take some of T.O.'s hardest shots, particularly the uppercut?
Yeah, but if you look at some of those uppercuts, though, they weren't clean.
Yeah, some of them weren't.
Yeah,
some of them
I did feel that if some of those other shots would have landed clean, a little more, he would have done better.
Mm-hmm.
But shut up, man. He would have done better, but he didn't. You know, like that, like, you know, those shots, some of them weren't that clean. But he did what he was supposed to do, you know, control the fight. Absolutely control the fight, you know, and Lomachenko to me seemed like when you got a car stuck in second gear.
Yep. Yeah, he definitely.
You know, so people were waiting for him to do something, and he didn't. And so that's where we have to be real careful of. Because in saying that, I don't want to take anything away from T.O. Because that can happen to anybody. So I don't want to hear people say, oh, well, you know, if Lomachenko would have gotten a gear, for sure he would have. But that's why the fights had to be played out. How many of us honestly said, yeah, T.O. has a great chance, but picked Lomachenko over on experience? Most of us did. You know, it was very compelling because we wanted to see T.O. because we thought he was good, and he had shown to be good. We also didn't know how he would handle adversity because you didn't learn anything from the Conley fight. You know, that fight ended so quickly that you couldn't say. And then you could have taken all the fighters on the rest of the time put together, and they didn't make up a Lomachenko that he had fought. Again, not a diss against him in any way. What I'm trying to say is that, you know, if you had to just look at it on a pure, not fan bias, but on a pure boxing intellectual sense, then you have to say, okay, he has a chance, but Lomachenko is a favorite.
What do you think Teofimo could still improve on as he moves forward to bigger and better things? One thing I noted was that his defense was a little suspect. His head movement might have not been there in the late rounds.
Yeah. Again, I don't know. There was times where he froze a little bit like that. I don't know if it was just because he didn't respect Lomachenko's power, or if he just, you know, whether it was just like, you know, hey, he lost focus for a second, or he just doesn't have the move, because I've seen him move before. He's got the ability to do that. So I don't know if, you know, what was the case when that was happening. That said, yeah, of course, you know, they're talking about, I don't blame it. Listen, I know there's people who say that his father's not their cup of tea and da-da-da-da and whatnot. I don't, you know, you don't judge the father. I mean, you know, let's just work on judging the fighter. Forget about the father.
Yep.
You know, and it's cool that he wants to do stuff, you know, like, you know, he's saying, I want to chase dreams. I'd rather, you know, unify at another weight class, which would be, you know, tremendous, you know, if he could. At 135, you know, what happens now though with the different things? Can they make, you know, a Haney fight? You know, him and Tank fight, let me tell you, they sparred when they were amateurs, and Tank got the much better of it.
Yeah, that's fun sessions on YouTube. It was,
you know, but that was then, and this is now. You know, and boxing is, you know, boxing is different. You got to let the fight play out. It would be great if we got to see that fight, but then, you know, Tank is BBC. And then we got the politics that play to it. And then you got Haney, who's sort of in the, you know, he's in the zone. Yeah. He's co-independent because he's got his own promotional company, but he's co-promoted Matchroom. So he's co-independent. You know, would they make that fight? Who else at 135? You know, would be interesting.
Luke Campbell is going to be fighting Ryan Garcia next month.
Yeah.
The winner of that fight would certainly have a right to challenge Teofimo if he chooses to stay at 135, and that's big if, because he's a very big lightweight. Moving up to 140, if he does so, I'd love to see him fight the winner of Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez if and when they unify the titles.
Yeah, that's what he wants to do, and you know, at the end of the day, money talks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The young man he's a young man. He's a millionaire. He's a unified champion. It's like all the dreams came true, you know. And I remember there was a moment when he was in the amateurs that he seemed to dip off for a little bit, and then he came back strong before the Olympics, and was winning everything everywhere.
Yep.
And, at that time, you never know how to predict what an amateur fighter is going to do in the pros. And sometimes with little dips like that, people start saying, I don't know how far to go. I tell you what, if you were a believer in him, great. If you wasn't a believer in him, you got to give the man credit now. Yeah, and see, there's no point in hating on him. That's for sure.
No, not anymore. And I think I'll end it with this, that, he was the first of these young lions to really break through and fight at this level of opposition. I mean, a lot of criticism has gone to Devin Haney for fighting Gamboa, Tank Davis for fighting Gamboa, Ryan Garcia is finally stepping up. Do you think this is the kind of fight that's going to get the likes of Shakur Stevenson, Tank Davis, Devin Haney, maybe even Ryan Garcia if he wins next month, to start taking on the best in their division at a faster rate than they were previously?
Well, the thing is this: he just set the bar super high.
Oh yeah.
And we understand this is a business. Look, this is a business. I'm not an idiot. I got a young prospect right now, and Dominique Francis said, that we're going to move him how we feel we want to move him.
Yeah.
As development the pace. So, I don't. Back in the day, that's how they used to do that. You know what I mean? So I don't knock the way they've moved Haney or Garcia or anything like that. I do knock that they try to sometimes super hype fighters way before, instead of just being like, hey, he is a very good prospect, and we're moving him like we're supposed to. He's learning how to fight against different styles and developing. That's what they should be, instead of sort of kind of being like, that's semi-promoter, semi-media problems where, in social media today and everybody's like, oh, this guy's a superstar a little bit before he's a superstar, instead of just saying he's very good. I don't know, some guys are going to say it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense business-wise, but he rolled the dice. Again, credit to him. He rolled the dice and said the heck with it, and he came up golden, 7. He rolled 7, So, I don't think that's going to change, though, the way the majority of the people move their fighters. One, there's good prospects, there's very good prospects, and then there's a couple of elite prospects, and at the end of the day, so much money goes invested into them and trying to move them right, and so many things have to be done business-wise right, that it wouldn't make sense for them to just be like, I would be against it, for them to be like, okay, I got a kid who's 10-0, I want him to fight for the title now, you know what I mean? Instead of let me get him a couple of different looks and the right things so he knows how to get through that adversity ahead of time. That's really the correct way to build up a fight. Some guys, they jump, and I'm not going to hate against them for being successful in their jumps.
Yeah, no, that's what happened last night. I thought he was in over his head for taking up such a big step up in class in one fight, and proved me wrong, and now he's on top of the world. Pound for pound, definitely in the top 10, I would say. So congratulations to Teofimo Lopez. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Congratulations to him and his team.
Yeah. All right. Wish you the best, Derek.
Okay. You good.
I expect a tough, clean fight. Protect yourself at all times. Any questions from the challenger?